Historic environment records are a way of putting down all the information we know in one place about the historic environment, which people need to know about, because if they want to change anything, and we always do change things, they need to know what they might be damaging or what they might need to avoid, or the whole history of that place.
We're here at the site of the stage development, which is all these new buildings built in the last couple of years. But excitingly, on the site, we have the remains of Shakespeare's Curtain Theatre. A lot of research suggested that the site was here, but of course no one could say it was actually physically here. So a lot of desk-based research was done, looking at maps, looking at documentary sources. But it was only when the trial evaluation took place that we could finally prove that it was here, and it's the site that Shakespeare wrote for, and particularly he performed at. So it's hugely exciting. Sometimes it's very hard to create a proper picture in your mind's eye of what these sites look like. So the physical remains here, for me, they actually give me a sense of magic.
Lots of our people on the development advice side, for example, spend their lives looking at data and trying to assimilate it and make sure it's consistent and authentic. And actually the whole point of Arches is that it allows that comparison to be made and to use standard vocabulary to describe places, which takes out a whole level of inconsistency. And we're under huge pressure to make the planning system work better in this country at the moment. And this is a really good example of where it might.
Our mission at the Conservation Institute here at the Getty is to advance conservation practice. And by that we do a number of things. We, I hope, introduce new knowledge that's a benefit to conservators, but we also create tools that help people do their jobs more effectively. And Arches, I think, is just such a tool.
It is a digital system. It allows for much more rapid access to information and indexation of information.
We relied very heavily on Historic England because they had great expertise, and it just made Arches a much, much stronger tool. And it forces a level of uniformity, good data management, and they were powerful partners for us in that regard. So working with them, we created, alongside of them, a particular instance of Arches, Arches for inventory, but for HER.
Working with the Getty Conservation Institute has been great. I can't thank them enough for their support, but also their developers, Farallon Geographics, have been absolutely great.
We have a historic environment record where you can find out very quickly what investigations there have been in an area and what is known historically about an area at the very early stage of planning. So here we knew that we were likely to find the remains of the Curtain Theatre, and so they could be planned for. We carried out investigations so we knew that they could be displayed within the new development, and so the stage development above us is now benefiting from having this heritage within its basement, and there is not a battle between development and archaeology. The two work together.
Agencies, projects, anyone in the world can take it on and adopt an instance of it.
That's one of the other big benefits of the system, is the fact that it's open source. The open source nature of the software just means that anytime someone has an idea for something they want to add to it, if they've got the capacity to make that happen, then it can be done and it can be added back in for the rest of the community to use, because if someone thinks it'll be useful, then no doubt there'll be other people who will also find it useful.
The developers in the wider community will sit there and say, actually this would be great for everyone to use, and then you can give that back for the entire community to use. Being part of the community makes you think about things in a different way, and things get flagged up that you otherwise wouldn't have considered.
Historic England on Arches for HERs, one of the things we invested a lot of time in with our colleagues here was on meeting UK accessibility standards.
We played a very big part in making sure that all the core code in Arches was accessible. It will meet the requirements of the UK government. An application that as many people can use as possible.
As a local administrator, I find it very easy to set people up. I've got granular control over what people can see, do, and access. And that's not just the data, but that's about the mapping, which is built in as well, which is great. It's very easy to search for information, but you can also build very complicated searches using filters. When it's visualized, it almost looks like a spider web, hence we call it Boris. And that's a very nice way of, once you've found a record, seeing what's related to it.
It's quite an interesting way of just visualizing all of that interlinked data, and also can be used to navigate from resource to resource.
Arches is semantically enabled, it's geospatially enabled, and so it allows customization to any place in the world. And it's also been, quote, internationalized. So there are more than 100 active, fully implemented instances of it in the world at the moment.
For people who are coming in new, there's quite a low barrier to entry, so you can build up some really quite complicated searches. You can see that it's a limited vocabulary for the area status, and we've got one for Shine, Selected Heritage and Retreat for Natural England.
Over the last year, we've managed to engage with lots of different community groups and volunteers, adding lots of different records across London to enhance our understanding of places and why they're so important to local communities. And this is something that we weren't able to do before with our previous system.
You might grant some edit access to volunteer users or external users who are trusted with a certain type of resource. So it's really good for engagement.
I've generally found Arches very user-friendly by adding the parks and gardens and churchyards, etc. onto that huge multi-layered database with all those layers underlying it is fantastic.
As a web-based system, it means that I can give them the URL to start using the system. I've created over 100 accounts so far, something which previously we wouldn't have been able to do due to licensing. So this means that I can make the system very accessible to internal users, but also external. That might be local conservation officers, but also our volunteers.
A product, if you will, that anyone in the cultural heritage community can utilize.
It's a fluid system, it's simple and easy to use, and made our lives a lot easier.